I think sometimes people are intimidated and, whether they're starting their business or like, working on growing their business, that everyone just has this like perfectly strategic, polished business plan of why you chose this thing and how you're going to scale it and, all of that. And it's like, I mean, I know I've never had that either in any business I've started. Sometimes it's just like the stars align in a way and it's like, well, this could work. And then you like pour some gas on it and it's like, does it light on fire? It's like, oh, it is. Like, let's pour some more. And then you just start growing. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm here with Travis from Rotate Digital, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with him today. And I think there's going to be a lot of nuggets for those listening in on, it's more, unique where Travis has already scaled a business, has a good sized team, and is already doing, really well. And I'm not going to, go into all the details. I'll let Travis jump into that himself. So Travis, why don't you go ahead and share with the audience, what is your company? What do you specialize in and doing, kind of how you got started in that, and, what does your team size look like and, revenue look like for your company today?
Yeah. Thanks so much, Cody, for having me on. I'm excited to be here. Excited to share nuggets and get nuggets in return, and I think it'll be a fun time. So,
Yeah.
I am Travis. I am the kind of the owner, founder. I act as like CEO of Rotate Digital, and we are a digital marketing agency, and we specialize in SEO and websites, and that's kind of really where our core service offering is right now. And then we've niched that down into offering that for moving company owners. And so we we've basically kind of where we're at today. We've got about 30 or so team members here, both overseas and here in the United States. And we've over the last, I started this in 2019, basically at the beginning of 2019. And so we've doubled every year. And this last year is actually the first year that we have not doubled. Which really, really hurts my pride a little bit. But it's been a great
It
learning
gets
experience.
harder, as you keep growing. It's like the doubles become so much bigger.
Yeah, it's a fun story to tell people, but it's not as fun when you're like, all right, it was a 30% increase this year. I was like, doesn't sound as sexy, but it was, it was good, especially, a lot of times everyone's kind of concerned about scaling a business and growing and growing. And the other side of it is like compared and relative to the industry and what's happening. And, we'll talk about it more later, but the moving industry got hit pretty hard last year. And so
Yeah.
I'm proud and excited and learned a lot for being able to still grow in a, what would be a downward industry right now. So, but yeah, so I've owned the company for what, going on 5 years now. And, I'm also a pilot. So for anyone listening, I am a flight instructor. I'm a commercial pilot. I could be flying in the airlines if I wanted to right now. And my passion and joy is to fly airplanes.
Dude, that's super cool. It's kind of embarrassing, but I'll just share it just to give, everyone else a laugh. But I was kind of being convinced from a friend of like, going down the path of maybe getting my pilot's license. And like I put in like 25 hours and I had like a really terrifying landing, like where with the wind, like it was probably not a good day where I should have been flying, but my instructor was probably not the greatest and almost crashed. And it put the fear of God in me where I was just like, I'm going to set this thing down and like I'll ride along and my friends that have their licenses and have a good time, but I'm just going to leave this,
Yeah.
this hobby
Yeah.
alone. But it's impressive. I have a lot of respect now just from like initial learnings that I had for everyone that, has went through the process of getting their pilot's license. It's super cool.
Yeah, you hate to see the experience you had because it's not norm, and it probably was a huge error on the the instructor side of things. But sometimes you got to deal with that. But I've had a great time. I've had no major emergencies in all my years of flying. So, but I know I'll
That's
have
all.
one soon. But that's why we prepare, we train, we stay current.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome. So diving into your business. So did you start out like niching into the moving space, or like what caused that? You got started. Were you kind of just offering like website and SEO services to everybody, or was that you were like, I'm gonna niche and then get into a niche within the niche?
Yeah, great question. So I basically wanted to make some money online, and it wasn't that I was like I want to make money online. It was just that I was good with computers, and so back in the day, like I was building GoDaddy websites with the website builder, and I was charging like $300 a website, and it was just to help people out. And so when I was overseas for a little bit, and so when I came back and I started basically trying to offer this. And so we ended up getting into quite a few different industries, from restaurants, doggy treats, e-commerce, insurance, moving companies. I was doing a little bit of everything for everybody. And I was
Yeah.
making probably like $4,000 a month. And I was just kind of, learning. And so what happened is I wanted to become a pilot. So I had to quit my full-time job, and I basically leaned into this. And so I bought a course, and the course taught me a little bit more on how to grow an online business. And what was really cool about that is they said, choose a niche. And so at that time, I ended up choosing the moving industry because I knew I could get one testimonial. And with that one testimonial, I knew I could get one more sale. And so I chose the moving industry haphazardly, to be honest. Like, everyone's like, what made you choose the moving industry? It's like, I had a testimonial and I knew I could do something with that. And the fight, once I chose that, I would say the biggest difference in setting us kind of moving forward is I learned how to sell, which is huge. I had a job that taught me how to sell, where like before my business wasn't growing that well, but I also didn't know how to sell very well. And then
Mhm.
the other switch was, once we got into the niche, proving and doing better than everybody else and like getting an outcome and getting results was really what helped us continue to grow. But yeah, ultimately we chose the moving industry because we knew we could get one testimonial, and we went after it. I didn't know anything. I thought there was probably maybe 40 moving companies in the United States. And I was like, well, you may as well try. So
That's amazing. I mean, I think we always underestimate like how big certain niches are, because like I would be like, man, like how do you have enough people that have moving companies? But it's like the niches are like, it's like even in like a niche like that, I'm sure there's millions of, I mean, I don't know, millions or hundreds of thousands of moving companies across the U.S. that need services. So it's super interesting. And I think the encouraging thing too on that share is like you sharing that. I think sometimes people are intimidated, and whether they're starting their business or like working on growing their business, that everyone just has this like perfectly strategic, polished business plan of why you chose this thing and how you're going to scale it, and all of that. And it's like, I mean, I know I've never had that either in any business I've started. Sometimes it's just like the
yep.
stars align in a way, and it's like, well, this could work. And then you like pour some gas on it, and it's like, does it light on fire? It's like, oh, it is. Like, let's pour some more, and then you just start growing. And it's like I feel like it's a lot of way.
The funny thing with that is, I share that I forget all the things that I went through. I originally was trying to sell a course to moving business owners, a marketing course, let's say. I didn't have enough knowledge, and I remember getting on 30 phone calls with moving company owners, because that was my goal. It was like, get 30. Don't switch, don't change anything, get 30 phone calls. And I was trying to sell a course, and nobody was buying a course, and everybody were like, well, do you offer marketing services like SEO? I was like, no, it's a course. This is what I sell. And so after about like 10 people, the 11th person was like, do you offer SEO? I was like, yeah, we do, actually. We offer it. They're like, what's that about? I was like, well, we just help you rank on Google. They're like, well, how much a month? I was like, it's $1,000 a month. And they're like, great, how do I sign up? And that is literally how it started. And then I had to
I
figure out
love
what SEO was, and how to get going into it, and what I should even do. So I got my first payment before I really knew what I was doing.
I love it. That's just
Yeah.
the true entrepreneurial adventure of like saying yes and figuring it out. It's like, freaking jumping off the cliff and building it on the way down.
Oh, 100%. So yeah, for
I
for anyone
love
who's
that.
like, I need this beautiful plan, it's like, you just need a couple conversations.
And your plan's going to get screwed up anyways along the way, and you're going to have to
Hmm.
readjust all, along the way,
Yeah.
so it's super funny. So now, obviously you've grown your business to where you're at now with 30 plus team members. You've been doubling every year, 30% growth in a down year for the industry last year. What do you kind of see as like your like the biggest challenges or obstacles that you're working through now and with your company?
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about kind of like the obstacles as I grew. Like when I first started this business, it was like
Hmm.
pay the bills. So it was like get enough where
Yeah.
I could start paying my own bills, right? And that
Yeah.
I think people get afraid of that being a goal, and that's okay. Like my first goal was like, let's just pay some bills because I'm going to flight school. I'm going through the like, let's just make sure we can live, you know. And then the next stage was like, okay, well now we can pay the bills. Now pay for flight school. Like, and now I as long as in my opinion, as long as you're understanding, you've got to create real value in the marketplace. Like these little goals are quite okay. So it was like pay for flight school. Then when we got done with paying for flight school, it's like, okay, what's next? And so, we're at $3 million of revenue is what we did last year. We're trying to grow again this year. And so each stage had different areas of like, what is my goal I'm trying to do? So now, one of the biggest struggles that I have right now in my business is I am putting out all the day-to-day fires, right? That keep me from visioning a bigger growth. Like to a point, like especially as like owner and CEO, like just the dichotomy of like I own my company and therefore I need to think about this company as an investment, but I'm also paid a
Like,
salary as a hourly my time put. And I think
yeah.
what clicked like 6 months ago is like those are two different thought processes. Those are two different things going on that I need to be well aware of and think very
Yeah.
differently. And so, right now it's like, how do I get a little bit more out of the day to day? So we're going through a process of hiring like our first COO, and that's an exciting challenge. And to look at that, the money going in towards it, but then to look at like, well, if this person comes in, I need to then grow from there. Who do I need to bring
Yeah.
in place? What kind of growth do I need to have to justify it? How long am I going to make this investment before my return makes sense? So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at now, is like, how do we best do that kind of growth? How do we best hire the COO?
Ooh, I love that. That's super fun.
Mm-hmm.
This is like one of my most favorite parts of the business. Like, and you're like one of my favorite type of business owners to talk to because you've already, I love all the startup business owners, but like a lot of them still have the mindset issues of like, can I do it?
Oh,
And it's like, I want to talk about tactical, like, this is what's going on. Like, how do we solve it? So, my question for you is, have you already hired the COO or you're starting to advertise for the role?
starting to advertise for the role. I've got a couple key people in mind that I'm having some conversations with. We're kind of at that beginning stage of like, how do we know this is, because there's just so much stuff, and the more you look into a COO role, the more you realize like there's no way to be like this is the exact person you're looking for. And so we've really looked at this role of going, what are you going to own, and what are the outcomes that need to happen in order for this to be successful. And so that's kind of the conversation we've been at now.
Yeah, so I would ask, do you have like an operations manager or director or any of those levels or currently in the company?
No, I basically handle the head of most of the departments as
Mm-hmm.
manager level. If I'm not like marketing, I'm the only really marketing person. But like account
Mm-hmm.
managers, I'm the head of account management. But we have
Yeah.
got four people on that team, and so I have to be very careful too around. And the reason why we've kind of leaned towards hiring a COO is going, assume we can find that right person. It will be easier for us to onboard a well valued COO that can help us get to another level to than it will be to hire a bunch of 4 or 5 different people to own departments that don't really need a full-time manager yet. And so that's kind of our thought process.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to tell you some mistakes that I made that
Mm,
were a lot of pain and suffering. That I've now, made this change in any company that we build or acquire now. And what I did wrong in a couple of companies was I called every role. So like, our bookkeeper was our CFO, and then we hired in someone and, called them immediately our COO, but they didn't have any COO experience. And then, our someone that just knew how to run ads, we called them our CMO. And it's like, we just had
mm,
these like ridiculous, these super high titles. And lessons that I learned was our growth became inhibited. Like one of our companies in particular became inhibited because we had the highest level role. Like we had, a COO that had never actually built and like sat in that seat before, and like their professional development wasn't at a place where it was going to be able to get us to where we wanted to go with the company.
Mm.
And they were already the highest level title in the company for operations. And it was like weird to try to find someone else that was better that would then like, how do we just fire them? And it became this weird thing. And so what we implemented this process of an employee maturity model in our company. So say for operations, for example, like in any of our companies, somebody that would be starting out in an operational role is going to be, and it could be in any department that touches operations, like account management or onboarding or whatever. They have that role, but we have it start with like operations manager, director of operations, senior director of operations. Then from a senior, then they could become a vice president of operations, president of operations, then a COO. So that there's
Mm.
this whole path of how they could eventually grow to the COO. Because what we found too is there's also a growth plan in place for them. Because when someone comes in at COO, it's like, what is their ascension? What role would they eventually go
Mm.
to? Maybe CEO if you wanted to step out of the business. So obviously it's food for thought, but that was something that we did. And to give you an idea, like one of our companies that did just under 30 million last year, we didn't have even a COO. We had a director of operations was the highest. We didn't have even a senior director. We didn't have a VP. We didn't have any of those stages. But what it did was it created a growth plan for our this girl on our team. She started as like an account manager for like Facebook basically. Then she ascended to operations management for two different departments. Then she was doing so good that then she went to director of operations. And then so her next path in her career was senior director. And then, so she saw like what does that look like of the growth path that I can have in this company. And that becomes more of what I found is like, our jobs as the owners is like showing what's the path of success at this company and like what are outcomes that have to happen and like salary ranges too.
Mm.
Because as we grew, in one of our companies, which is where I learned some of these lessons. And, I had somebody that was technically a COO role. And so they would go, when it came to time for raises, they're like, I'm a COO. I'm Googling other roles of COOs and look how much they're getting paid and look how much I'm getting paid. And then you have
Yep.
this weird friction conversation and it's like, well, we're not that big yet. It's like, yeah, then it's like the weird thing. Right. So that was something that I always recommend looking at is like, because it for the role that you're looking for, you could probably hire a super talented director of operations that has like that experience of running like this girl on my team that for the company I was just telling you about. She was running the info team, the media team that oversaw like content and social media, and she was overseeing like almost, I mean, there's probably a little over 30 employees that she was overseeing in that role and
Mm.
as a director. And so that would be something that I would just consider is like, see if you could hire a director level, because a director level can do the things that you're talking about wanting them to do. And then they still have a path to grow. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's good insight, and I think there's a lot of wisdom there because we've experienced it in ourselves where it's like you hire someone, it's like, yeah, you may be called a sales manager, a VP of sales, but you're really just a sales rep, or like, hey, we're calling you head of marketing, but you're really just a digital marketer. You're like, we
Yeah.
got no one else in marketing, so we decided, and it really has a lot of the times it ends in this kind of hard kind of tension conversation because it's like, well, I'm head of marketing. It's like, yeah, but you execute in your role and responsibilities is digital marketing. And I think the key thing that's that can flow between the bad mistakes we've had and what you're saying is really understanding the outcomes, and like whether it's a director of operations or an operations manager or COO or whatever it is, the outcomes, at least in my current business needs, may still be needing to be the same. Sometimes they play into things that a COO will do. Sometimes they'll play into things that a manager of a customer success team will do, but it's getting really clear on like, what is the outcome you need? Because we have found, and I'm sure everybody has experienced this, is there are so many people who are like, look at all the work I did. And you're like, that's great, but you didn't get the outcome we needed. And that's the problem. They're like, but I worked really hard. It's like, I get that, but you didn't get the outcome we needed. And that's the problem. And so I think that is really wise because it's like, whatever we call your role, we've got to be clear on the outcomes that we're focused on.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like, and especially like, I'm sure you as the owner, and like I think about this, I'm like, I don't care what the titles are, but the team members, sometimes there's certain ones that they
Mm,
care a lot. Like it matters what they tell their friends and family their title is at work. Like it's like being thoughtful around it. But like you said, the establishing like what is the success for the role. And like that's something that we'll do whenever a role comes in. It's like we have a 30, 60, 90 day. These are the things that we want to see you accomplish in it. And on our JDs, for each role, it's like we have three key responsibilities, and then like sub items like under each of those. It's like team building and management is one of them. Maybe it's over product development and implementation is another one. Then there's like sub items under those, and so it's so important that I found. And it sounds like you're already doing that, of like making it extremely clear of like what the successful outcome that we're looking for is. I had a business partner tell me this story. He used to have a construction company years ago, and he hired a guy, a subcontractor, to dig a ditch for this pool in this yard. And he's like, it needs to be on, they met at the property, they're looking out there, the pool needs to be dug on the right side of the yard. So comes back, 2 days later, job's done, goes to the backyard. The pool is dug on the left side of the yard. But then he's like, you didn't dig the freaking ditch on the right side of the yard. And he's like, I did. It's on the right side. It's like, if so, they walked out there together. They turned around, and when they're looking at the back of the house, the right side of the yard is where he dug it. But the right side was no. When we looked out there from the back door, it was supposed to be the right side. And so the
mhm.
guy's like, well, I should still get paid. And, the conversation was like, so I should pay you for the work that you did incorrectly because you worked so hard, even though the outcome wasn't what we agreed on was supposed to happen. So it's like,
Mhm.
there's that, and that's real. Like that happens. People misunderstand like what actual success in their role is versus like, I just worked really hard and I feel this or I feel that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you can get into a place where it's like, well, I was managing the team. I was doing Facebook ads. I was doing email marketing. I was doing X, Y, Z. And it's like, yeah, but it didn't get what I needed it to do. And that's, and
Yeah.
that's the tough part. So yeah, no, 100%. That's great.
That's so funny. So I one thing I'd ask, so do you have you built out like your company's like org chart, like on like a Lucid chart or a Miro board or anything?
Yeah, so we built it out on a Lucid chart, and well, actually built it out on both. But we built it out, and one of the things that we're going through right now, or that I'm going through, is building it out now, building it out for what we need in a year, and then dreaming a little bit about what we think we need in the next year, which is way more of a difficult task because you've got to really think through like, well, what is our what do we need and how do we forecast for that? Because I've before forecast is like, well, let's just drag this percentage all the way over. It's like, well, no, with a good COO or with a good management, you're creating efficiencies in that whole process. So it's like
Yeah.
just brainstorming out a year is hard, 2 years, very difficult. But yeah, so we're looking at where we're at today and then what 9 months look at like, and then potentially then just an idea of what does 2 years look like. And so that's what we're doing right now. Actually, I have it on my whiteboard right over there.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, the org chart development piece is super fun, and it's cool. Like you're already thinking about that forecasting out over that 9 months next year, and like seeing it's like what roles are going to have to exist in these different areas, to be able to support like the new business coming in, and what roles that don't exist now are going to have to exist because there's going to be more team members and different
Mhm.
workloads on certain areas of the business. So already getting the org chart, getting that operational role in place. What do you think's kind of the next thing from there?
Yeah, well, I think once I here's the goal and the outcome is that I take a little bit of, although I am always going to be the person holding everybody accountable and responsible of outcomes of the business. My hope is that when a COO or director of operations come in, it allows me to get away from the day to day and then be able to think about a bigger leverage that we have. Because one of the things that is hard is, Travis 5 years ago would sit here and go, man, I don't know if you could make a $500,000 company in the moving industry alone, right? Travis 3 years ago goes, man, there's no way you can get to 1.5 million, right? And then Travis today is like, well, how do we get more? And so it's, one of the problems. I'd be curious on how you guys look at it, how you look at it, and just looking at like, I'm caught in my day to day. I'm caught in where we're at today. But
Yeah.
how do I invest and think mindset level on well, what does this look like to be a $20 million company? And what is the stuff that I need to invest into, and how do I track those investments, and how do I think through that to allow me to give myself the opportunity to actually grow the company maybe a little faster or bigger than maybe I've ever dreamed. That to me is really difficult, because it's like, all right, I can see the path to 3.5 million from 3 million. I potentially can see the 4 million.
Yeah.
Cannot see the path to
Yeah.
10 million. And I don't know how to even think about it, and the investments and the people.
Yeah. So what I've found a lot of times, based on like things that have broken and different companies that we've built over the years, is one is a lot of like technical like CRM and data tracking and management becomes an issue in the mid like $3 to $5 million range. I've found that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times with our companies that as they would grow past a million, couple million, we would see a lot of data issues, and having really good tracking and data management of all of the key indicators for the company becomes really critical.
Yeah.
So you're probably shaking your head of like, we're doing that now.
No, we're just getting into like realizing, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, like we're barely tracking the things I really need to know.
Yeah. And that's where you'll feel more confidence with your forecasting. So like we'll look at whenever we're forecasting for whatever we want our growth to be, is we have to look at, I look at every business like a conveyor belt. So like from the beginning stage of like, okay, things would fall onto the conveyor belt, which is marketing, like the lead gen of like our clients. It falls onto the conveyor belt, and then it goes to sales. Once it's sold, then it goes down the conveyor belt to the fulfillment team to actually do the thing that we promised them that they were going to be able to
Mm-hmm.
do.
Yeah.
And then servicing the customer from there. And so getting really dialed in on the data of what are you doing for marketing, how much does it cost you to acquire a customer, and then because when you know exactly how much it costs you to acquire a customer, then you can look at the profitability of, okay, if we charge $5,000 when somebody first starts and it costs us $2,000 to actually acquire that customer, then there's a $3,000 spread. Well, how much of that
Mm-hmm.
$3,000 goes towards the fulfillment team and all of that, like all the profitability of acquiring a customer? Because then you can put the right amount of ad spend behind it to know whether you can keep throwing money at marketing because it's going to be profitable. And then, it's like understanding some of those things, and like your lifetime value of a customer. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
know on average every customer means $8,000 or $10,000 over time, then you can make better decisions of how much you spend to get them in the door, and how long they stay. And so getting the data super clear in this range will help you really confidently be able to make decisions on going to 10 million plus. And the other challenge that I see happen and that bottlenecks businesses from going through it and experience is the leadership team that's being built, and like the 5 to 10 million range becomes super important. Like all of those data things become important, but then having the people that can make accurate, smart, responsible decisions with those data points to drive the company forward. Like the people that
Mm-hmm.
are overseeing the marketing are paying attention to what is the cost to acquire a customer, how long do they stay, how much do we what's our lifetime value of the customer. They should be paying attention to that. And whoever's overseeing sales looks at sales and says, okay, well, we get this many leads, this is how many we actually close. What do we need to improve? Is it our closing percentage needs to goes up? Is it we need to get with marketing and we need to increase the quality of lead because we're getting too many unqualified prospects? So
Mm-hmm.
and then all the way down to fulfillment. Hey, fulfillment could only handle 10 clients at a time. Well, if marketing and sales are scaling to 15 at a time, fulfillment's going to have the issue. So it's like looking at it on that conveyor belt view is how I like to see it, and knowing the data in each department and how all of those match together. So then collectively as a company, the final piece of that I look at, that's like what I see has gotten, a few of our companies to 10 million plus is then the vision that you set for the team. It's we're going like, this is our mission, this is our vision, this is where we're going. And for all of these things to come true, all of these areas are going to have to be on the same page. So it's like, if we're going to go to this revenue amount, our average customer spends this, it means we need to grow by X amount of new customers. Hey, marketing, we need this many leads to be able to do that. And hey,
Hmm.
sales, if we need this many sales reps to close this many at this percentage to do that. Fulfillment, we got to hire some more people to fulfill on this and keep the quality good and keep those customers longer to be, make sure our profitability is there. So it's combining together, like making sure you're tracking the data that matters so you can make those data track decisions, and then having the team that's accountable for managing that. And then you as the owner, which is really the main thing that I do for our companies, is like, this is where we're going. And so I can meet with my team members and, look at marketing and like, hey, like our forecast is we need this many leads a week, and each week we need to grow by 2 additional leads so that over time we get to our target. If we're off track, how are we fixing this? What are we going to do? What are you going to change on the ads that we're running? What is the copy? Do we need to do more email marketing? What can we do to make this adjustment? So it's really just a bit, a lot of data and scorecard management, and then vision casting. And that's where then sharing with the team, like, hey, when we go to this level, we only have you, to like a marketing person. You're a marketing manager. When we get to this size, we're going to have more team members. This means probably, possibly marketing director, but that doesn't exist unless the company reaches this target. So if they're ambitious and they want to get to that target, it's like, well, this is what has to be true for that to happen.
Hmm.
And so that's what I've found, like in that range. It's a lot of data metric tracking that becomes super important, and like the cleanliness of that data, like not getting fed crap data from like a
Hmm.
salesperson, or marketing or
They will.
fulfillment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like automating as much of it as possible so it's
Yeah.
as truthful as possible. But yeah, so those are some thoughts.
Yeah, I mean it makes so much sense, and I think you're hitting it with spot on. Is like that's where we're at today. Is like let's get the right tracking in place, especially tracking that I can trust, right? Because it's like you could tell me a number on my team, and it would be like, well, where are we getting that? I don't know if I trust that. So like getting the right tracking in place, and I think it's key is like that stuff can be done fairly easy or
Right.
fairly doable. And I think for me, I'm looking at going the biggest hurdle that I'm going to be working through is I got to get the data tracking in place, and I can do some work with spreadsheets and get some people to go, hey, then therefore, what can we spend on marketing? And I think the key will be that is the hardest part for me that I'm growing in is then getting the right people in there to create that outcome. It's like I can tell you the customer acquisition cost is, or our budget for customer acquisition cost is $2,500 a customer, let's say, right? Now, can we get somebody to be able to make that happen and drive that? And how do I track that so I know when the right person is there and when the wrong person is there so I can start getting the wrong person out? And that's for me is where I need to really excel into is being very clear and powerful in that and
Yeah.
really managing the people well of going, hey, this is our goal, this is where we're at. When it's off track, I need you to tell me what's going to be changed to get it on track. And then if they can't get it on track, they can't be at the team anymore because I can't just keep
No.
going down the wrong track. But it's hard. It's hard
No.
when they become friends of yours and when they've been at the company for a while. And so as a CEO and as an owner, I've got to get better at managing that.
Yeah, and that's the hard part too. But it's like, it's like those certain team members are what could be the difference of like you being where you are and where you want to go. And the other thing, when we keep those team members, and I've done this, so that's why I know from experience of doing this, is like keeping people too long because you're like, they're gonna figure it out. I believe in them so much. Like I hope they'll figure it out. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard when you really like someone too. And it's like, it's just, we're building a sports team. Like we're trying to get to the Super Bowl. Like we can't have, the one of the linemen not blocking the quarterback and their quarterback's getting crushed every play. It's like
Yeah.
that kills the whole team. And so it's, I try to do is create that accountability across the board. And where I explain to the team, it's like, guys, like the business runs like a conveyor belt. And so like when marketing drops the leads in, sales takes them, goes through to fulfillment, the whole wheels that grease the conveyor belt to keep this thing held up is like HR and finance and legal that hold up the conveyor belt. So it's like they hold the conveyor belt up. But if marketing isn't getting on, getting enough for sales, it hurts fulfillment, it hurts all of their careers and all of their advancement that they could have at this company because someone else isn't doing their job. And so
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm consistently saying to team members when I'm doing one-on-ones and we're doing coaching is, the business requires what the business requires. And so what that means is like, even for me, if I'm incapable at the certain growth of the company of doing a certain job, it's not something that I need to feel bad about. It's something that I just have to recognize I'm incapable of doing this thing now at where the company's grown to. I need to find someone to be able to delegate something to. And that's also what ties into like the career growth planning that we talk about with the team. It's like, look, you want to be eventually this director of operations or, VP of ops or like whatever role is. You're currently here. For our company to go to these levels, you're going to have to gain these new skill sets to be able to help the company continue to grow. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's just the business requires what it requires, and doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to be here, but your role might change. And that does happen sometimes. We've had people that were an operations manager and when we were really small, and then as we've grown, like they had to move to just like account manager of a certain department. And it's like that's just what they do because they weren't professionally developing themselves to be able to help the company be successful at where the company is today. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
like a consistent conversation I'm always telling our team. So they're never like, I thought I just, I've been here for 3 years and like I've been here since the beginning and da da da. It's like, well, if you've been the same every year for 3 years, that's why we can't excel because you haven't been growing. So
Yep.
that's a consistent conversation we have. And it's hard too, because like you said, it's like you build a relationship, you go to dinner with these people, you become friends and their family. And it's like, it's heartbreaking at times because you're just like, I want you to be so successful. It's literally killing me, but they aren't able to execute, it's
Yep.
hard.
Yep. That's why establishing I'm getting better at establishing up front, like here are the outcomes. Here's how we're tracking. Here's when it's at risk. And like we literally have a red, yellow, and green. When you're at yellow, you're at risk. When you're at green on our core outcomes, you're great.
Mhm.
When you're at red, it's not good, and it helps keep it a little bit more clear because each department we've identified the most important number that above all other numbers, above all data points, if this number is getting better, it will help the company or the department above that. And when that number is better, it helps the overall. And so each department, basically each department has its own most important number. And so that's one, there's lots of KPIs that support
Yeah,
it. But
for
we have
sure.
one most important number that helps us align of like end all be all. This is what needs to
Mhm.
happen. Because like even this month, like sales this last month, our department hit our most important number. We did well. Within that, though, we have some oranges in that because we
Yeah.
have different reps not doing so well. So, if I'm sitting here as a sales manager, go, hey, I did great on my most important number here. We hit our goal, but I've got some discrepancies because some guys are doing really well and some guys are not doing really well. And
Yeah.
that's super helpful because it helps. If I were in that shoes, it would help me to go, it helps me understand how I'm winning or losing, and the right people will be concerned with that. The right people, everyone wants to win. They just need to know
Yeah.
exactly what winning looks like.
Yes, exactly. It's what winning looks like. Like I talked to we bought this company in Florida last year, and we were kind of explaining because they didn't have any core values, they didn't have any like a mission or statement or like any org chart or any like nothing really there, and like no rules of like how things should work. They weren't tracking any KPIs. It was kind of just firefighting, running around doing things in their business. And I'm like, the equivalent of like trying to grow a business that way is like putting freaking they had like 17 employees. I'm like, put 20 people on a soccer field that have never played soccer, don't even know what soccer is, and throw a ball out there and just say, play, go. And it's just like, what do we pick up the ball? Do we throw it at each other? Do I tackle them? Do I use my feet? Like, what do you, like, we as the game makers, we as the business owners set the rules of engagement. This is how we work here. This is how we engage. this is what winning is. If you score a goal, that's a good thing. You should block the other team's goal. It's just like laying out what success is, what winning is, what the opposite of that would be, and like how they all mesh together and work together as a team. And it's like you don't need 7 goalies, you need 1 goalie. And so it's like getting that org chart established where it's not you have 4 people running at the same problem and like stepping on each other, a bunch of same cooks in the kitchen. It's like all of those things of like, all right, this is what the team looks like, this is how we're going to operate together, because that definitely becomes problematic.
100%. Yeah, and getting that clarity. I mean, it's just like everyone says, like it's not that it's so complicated. It's just that it's sometimes hard. And I've realized for me, I've realized in the last 6 months, I'm putting out a lot of day-to-day fires because I like hate it, whether I like it or not. I'm comfortable because I know it well. I know how to put out day-to-day fires. And so I stay there where it's like getting clear on a performance improvement plan, right? Or writing down a very core role that we need and getting very clear the outcomes. Like doesn't take necessarily a long time, but it takes a lot of thought, a lot of brain power. Lot of brain power, and it's the harder. And so I've always pushed that off because it's like, well, we have this day-to-day fire. It's like, yeah, well, that day-to-day fire is a little small fire, but I'm comfortable there. And so like as owners, we just keep realizing too, like sometimes the small stuff, even though it's difficult to work through, it's not like it's going to take me 30 weeks to go build a outcome for or a clear winning plan for a COO, maybe 5 hours at the most. It's just not comfortable.
100%. And I think, it's also, you get to be the hero a little bit too when you go put out the fire. It's like I came in, I helped save my team from, their demise, and it's like
I talked to an angry client.
Yeah, I reduced it, it's great. I saved the day. And, one of the things that, I really tried to focus on, like with my leadership team, is like getting them to, just feel comfortable in making the decisions and not bringing it to me, but then also then beginning to do that for their team as well. And, whenever I'll like try to teach my team delegation, like one of the things that I tell them is like, look, like when you haven't delegated too many things before, it's like start with the small things. Like you're not going to delegate something that's like the equivalent of heart surgery for a company that would literally like make our company go under if they like screwed this up. Like have them take out the trash or the equivalent of that. Like write one piece of copy for this thing and just have them do it and don't like see how they do. And then they're going to screw up and they're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Part of the learning process is like allowing people to make that mistake so they could take responsibility for it and improve and not berate them through the process. Like obviously, like, they have to eventually be getting it. Like if you're having to, give them feedback 10 times on the same thing over and over, it's like, all right, like I tell my team, I'm like, I'm okay with problems, but the same problem over and over again, we're not going to have that conversation. That's going to be different. So it's like, those are tough things sometimes, in that delegation phase, especially on the firefighting. Like I try to just push it back, whenever my different managers or directors will like bring stuff to me and they're like, hey, like I have this problem and like I don't know how to solve it. And like, if I wasn't here, how would you solve it? I just try to like ask inquisitive things like, how would you solve that? Like imagine, what if I was just like at a conference for our company for 2 days and like this was happening, what would you do? And, oh, okay, well, I think I would do this and this. And they usually have the solution. I think they just like, it's like mom and dad syndrome almost. Like they want to come to you and bring it and like get approval of like how to resolve it. It's like, you got this, like you can do it. Like you have the answer most likely.
Yeah. I've been implementing from that Buy Back Your Time book by Dan, what is it, Martell? And that 1-3-1. It's like, what's the one problem? What are the 3 different options of solutions and the one solution that you think you would want to move forward with? And that's actually been really helpful just within our company of like, hey, what's the one problem? Okay, what are the 3 different solutions and what do you think is the best solution? And then I'd be like, I agree, great job. Or I'd be like, here's the problem with that one. I really think you should actually come closer to this one or whatever. Because it's really easy for me to solve some of the problems and just be like, yeah, no, don't do that. Do this. Here's how you do it. So easy for me. But I know I continue to realize like I just handcuff my team members by doing that.
Yes. And yourself from being able to focus on like the above the business work that has to be done that then creates the results in the business that the team could be doing, So I'm curious. Do you have any like specific operating system that your company runs off of, like EOS by Gino Wickman, like his book Traction or anything like that, or like
Mhm.
do OKRs or anything like that?
Yeah, I think overall we do a version of OKRs. I've done the EOS. I know there's a lot of value in the EOS system. I found that sometimes the implementation of it can be overwhelming because when we think about like the value creation, it's like, well, implementing that, it's like you could do all this work and it's like, well, now we've just implemented something. So there's a book from a guy actually here in Arizona called Your Most Important Number and the Drivers.
Mhm.
And it's by Lee Benson, and it's called the Mind Methodology. And so I do a lot of operations out of that. What's nice is it creates very fast value impact alignment within the company. The thing that I would like to see more out of the book that I think EOS does a great job on is the details of like, okay, well then how? Right? Well, okay, these are these types of meetings or the rocks being moved. I think that's where EOS comes in really nicely. But in terms of quick impact, value creation alignment, I love the Mind methodology. So it's the one that I implement. We have it all mapped out. Every single job has outcomes that they know they need to create. Every single role either has their most important number or they understand their impact to the department's most important number. And then each department has its most important number that aligns with the most important number at the top line of the company, whether that's valuation or profit or whatever it is. And so that's the methodology that we do. I personally like it, especially for a smaller company. A lot of all the things you try to have to implement with the EOS, and I'm not trying to bag on EOS. It's just sometimes there's a lot, and when you're a smaller company, you don't have a lot of that time. You've got to create the most value with the least amount of work quickly, and so that's why I really like the Mind methodology. So I highly suggest it for anybody out there wanting to read it. It's a great book on
Well,
value creation.
it's called the Mind methodology.
It's called Your Most Important Number by Lee
Most
Benson.
important for Lee Benson. Okay, got it.
Yeah, he grew Able Aerospace, which is down in Mesa, Arizona, and sold that to Textron. So
Sick. I'm gonna have
smart,
to check
smart
that
guy.
one.
Yeah,
I love all of the, the operational like function type
yeah.
books. Have you read any of Mike McAllowic's books by
Mike
chance?
Mike McAllowitz. Why does that sound so familiar? Is that the numbers finance guy?
He has Profit First, Clockwork,
Mm.
Fix This Next. Like he has so many great books. The one he has, Clockwork, is like just literally like figuring out how to basically turn your company to like a franchise system in the sense of like systematizing everything. Like I'd nerd out on that one for sure.
Mm.
That one's super interesting. And then Profit First, like just like company finance
Yep.
management, basically. He has
Yep.
some good ones for some
Profit
frameworks.
First is a good one. Another really good one is called. Oh man, now I can't forget what it's called. I'll have to look it up, but it's called Numbers or something. I really loved the book because it helped me break down my understanding of me as a business owner and an owner of the business um, versus me also being a paid CEO or paid XYZ. I think it's called Simple Numbers. Yeah, Simple Numbers, Straight Talk. And he has two books. And so it's called Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, and it's by Crabtree, Gregory Crabtree. Really great book. In terms of finances, especially as a business owner, to kind of separate like you are an owner of an investment, something that
Yeah.
has investment value, but you're also paid salary for your work done in the business and aligning that and making that very clear in your decision making process. So,
So true. And I think that's where there's a lot of people that they get stuck in like, you know, the I'm the owner, but I also get a salary. Like that's how like because we have a couple different companies where we have like partnerships, and it's like and then like there are conversations around like how do we take distributions, and it's like you get a salary for the job you do, you get distributions for
mm-hmm,
the success and profitability of the company. That's how we get paid here. It's like
mm-hmm,
you do not get paid to do nothing. Well, I guess not do nothing. You don't get
yeah,
paid to, if you're not on the org chart of the company. You get a salary if you're on the org chart. You get profits if you're an owner. Like that's kind of
yep,
our framework on doing that. But that's, for some
exactly.
people, they're like, well, I'm an owner, like, and there's money at the end of the month. It's like, yes, but like you get a profit distributions.
Yeah, exactly. You get a profit distributions that are set out by some kind of operation or some kind of agreement,
Yeah.
and that's been helpful for me because it's like now I can sit here and go, I have my salary, and at the end of the month, I have an agreement. Now I'm the only owner, so I have my own agreement with myself, but it's a written agreement
You
that
still
goes,
need it. You still need
yeah,
that.
I'm going to take 70% of the profit and bring it into my bank account, my personal bank account, because we're a cash flowing business and we can. And so I get to reap the rewards of owning this investment vehicle, and 30%
Yep.
stays in. And I can always change it, but it makes it
Yep.
very clear now what is now coming to me personally that I need to then figure out how to reinvest and leverage better on other ways, and what stays in the business and what is salary and what is not salary. Super helpful.
I love that. And it's super impressive, like hearing you even talking about that. Cause like the amount of people that I even talk to that, they're doing 5 or 7 million or 10 million a year. And they're like money management is just like a train wreck. They're just like, I take out cash when I need it. And then like, if I can't, then I don't. And it's like, what are you doing?
I couldn't live like that. There would be way too much stress, way too much volatility. Business
Yeah.
ownership is already too hard. Like I've got to,
Yeah.
where we want to get rewarded. Like the most high impact players, they want to be rewarded, and money is a reward. It's not the only reason we work, but it's a shown, proven kind of reward system of going, you're doing well, you're creating more value. And so I want that. Like I want to build more wealth, create more money, create more value in what we're doing. And so I've got to take some distributions.
100%. And it's not feeling guilty for it either. It's just like you built this thing, and it's like you get to reap the rewards of the successes that you have. The same that, for people that don't have that, it's like you reap the rewards of the opposite. Like if you didn't build the business the right way, you're not going to be able to reap the benefits of, the success of it. What's your ultimate goal with your company? So you're talking about like, all right, 10 million, then 20 million. Is it to eventually sell to like a big, conglomerate digital marketing company, or is it kind of, build it, eventually put in, the leadership, reap the cash flow, but have like a management team that, runs the company, and just fly off into the sunset with your,
Literally
whatever
fly off into the
dream
sunset.
plane is. Yeah,
Yeah.
literally.
Don't ask hard questions, Cody. Keep it high level, okay? Don't ask hard questions, okay? Um, it's a great question, and I think there's a little bit of an existential crisis that I'm in right now, because again, we talked about like kind of the reasons for owning the business and what we were doing, and in probably in the last year, I was like, okay, like I've got my plane, my flight instructions paid off, like getting all these things, like I can pay my bills, and it's like, well, what are we doing this for? It's like, okay, well, we're doing this to make an impact, because we're making great impact into businesses, communities, people who, have their jobs. And, in the moving industry, it's a very cyclical, season for them. And so sometimes people get fired in the winter season and hired in the summer season. So when we make a big impact on a company, they're coming to us going, hey, I didn't have to fire John, normally I have to fire him. Like, did huge impact. But for me, I have to sit here and go, well, where am I going? So I think eventually I would sell. I don't have
Like,
any plans for it right now. I think, you know, especially because I don't know what I would do after this. So it's like I'm
well,
enjoying the learning that I'm doing. I've never owned a business before, and so I get to learn a lot. And my wife and I always joke of like, I'm so always overwhelmed in a good sense, because like I'm always learning more. Like there's not a day I start my day and I'm like, well, yep, just kind of run through the mundane, like same old, same
yeah,
old. And so I'm probably eventually wanting to sell, but right now I'm wanting to grow, use this opportunity of a cash flowing business to go, how do I become a better owner, better business owner, better CEO, and learn through this experience. So probably right now we're looking more into acquiring another company than we are into selling off. But I'm sure eventually I'm ready to do that. But it's definitely like I'm going to live the life of a CEO in the day-to-day work
yeah,
right now. I'm not looking to do nothing for a
yeah.
while. I'm not ready yet for that. So
Yeah, no, I love that, and that's the thing. Like, I'm always curious on like what people want to do, and it's like, I I just always am like, because one of our like focuses as a business is like acquiring, and we're working on acquiring like home service businesses here locally in Arizona,
mhm.
and I'm like, business of like building businesses and like I mean these conversations, like this is so fun. It's like it's just so much like joy and like fun, exciting, and like this is like talking about these different things going on in businesses at different sizes, and it's like I enjoy so much. It's like the patterns you see. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
I remember that exact same thing happened like at that similar point, and like you can kind of start to point out different patterns that happen, and then it's like, okay, next time I'm involved in something, like I could do that a little bit faster, and then oh, I know how to solve this problem now that I had with this other team member because it was the first time it happened, and now I know how to do it better. And it's like that life just learning process is just such a joy of and fun. And like, I mean, we're both young, so it's like I think about that, and like I had one of my original mentors like 10 years ago. He did a lot of fix and flips and then acquired a lot of rental properties that are paid off. And he said he retired when he was like 37. And he's like, dude, he's like, I was so depressed for like 6 months when I retired. He's like, I had enough cash flow to live, like my house was paid off, like I had all these paid off rentals. And he's like, I just got so depressed because I was so bored. He's like, I didn't have anything meaningful or purposeful to work
Yep.
on anymore. Like all my friends were still working. And so he's like, you can only golf so many days and like go to so many nice dinners until it gets boring. And it's like, there's not a thrill of life anymore. So then he got back into flipping and buying more properties and doing other, development projects and stuff. But it's like, I don't even know if it's I know for me, it's not the goal of like, retire. It's like, just what else can we do, and just do the things you want to do with the people you want to do them with and the way that you want to do them. And I think that's more my goal all the time than retirement. Is like, if I could just do that, it's like I'm around the people I want to be around, I'm doing the things I like to do, and being challenged the way I want to be challenged. It's like that's better than retirement to me, because it's
Mhm.
like, I mean, what else,
Right. Well, and I'm looking forward to being at a spot where I can dream a little bit and try new things without, because right now in my business, it's like I feel like my back is against the wall. Any wrong move could tank the company, even though I know it probably couldn't. But it's just like, man, I got to be very intentional about the things I spend my time on, because it's not like I've sold multiple businesses and it's like this is just kind of a trial. But I'm looking forward to the time where it's like, hey, I've got a little bit more security, you know, let's go try this, let's go and hire this person, let's go and try to build this, and I'm excited for that time. But I'm the same way. Probably everybody listening here is like, yeah, there's no such thing as retiring. We want to have joy. I've got 3 kids. Like, I want to enjoy life with them. I want them to know
Yeah,
that dad worked really hard, created value, but I also didn't sacrifice time with them,
yeah,
right? And it's easy to be like, oh, time with them, because I've got a lot of friends who are like, oh, I'm home and playing with my kids all day. Like, just being able to work and present and represent a good healthy harmony of like between family and work, and spending time with my kids, but also knowing that they know daddy worked really hard in setting that example. That's really important to me as well.
I love that. And I think a lot of people, resonate. I mean, I resonate with that too. I don't have kids yet, but I mean, that will be, within the next few years, that'll definitely be
Yeah.
coming. And I know we're coming up on time here, so I want to be respectful of that. But I do have one more question for you, which is, what would any words of encouragement or recommendations or things that you would tell someone that's maybe they're in the initial stages of their business, where they're maybe doing a few $100,000 or $500,000 a year in revenue, and they're really trying to break through to get to $1 million plus and start putting that team together? What would anything that you would share with them of like, hey, read this book or like do this thing, so that we can help them find their way to the similar success?
Yeah, I think there's a few things I would say is, number one, I do think you should read the book, Your Most Important Number by Lee Benson. I think it's helpful. It's very similar in a sense to The One Thing, if you've heard of The One Thing by
Oh, my
that.
Gary Keller.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's very similar to that, but in a much more business like, very clear like. I mean, it's a great book to read, and then you should have them on your podcast, because I think it would be great for the listeners. But I'd say read that book, and I'd say the second thing is, don't be afraid of also being and working in your business. I think there's a lot of just this talk of like working out of your business, working out is like, you
Passive
got to,
income.
yeah, 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 passive income. You've got to do what the business needs you to do. And so I'd say, don't be afraid and don't feel like you're a failure because you're not making $500,000 in passive income. Like, it's so rare. And the more and more I talk to people, even the people that I'm close to that, on a surface level, they may sound like they have that on their podcast, but then I know them and it's like, this is not passive income. This is, but it's, they like to talk about it. So don't be afraid of working within the business, and really, really think about the two things. Number one, how do we create more value within the business and for the customers? And really, what is, above all else, the most important things that you can do to grow the business? Because I remember being at 500K and going, there's 1,000 things I need to do. And I was lucky where I started a business in SEO and I don't know SEO. Despite I know how to talk about it and I know how to sell it, but I never knew SEO. I sold it because I loved the idea of selling a reoccurring amount. And so you don't have to be good at the thing that you create or the thing that you sell. You have to be good at like creating value with it. And so the thing that helped me grow was that I couldn't do the fulfillment. I never had the opportunity. So I had to find the right people, make sure it created that value, make sure it got the outcomes. And I was just always focused on selling. And at the beginning stages, like, as long as you're creating the value and the outcomes and producing value to your customer, sales is really, really important in your first 500 to $1 million. And so that allowed me, without necessarily being able to articulate, the most important thing is driving up more sales and more customers into the business. It allowed me to just focus on that, which I would argue ended up being one of the most important things I could have done, is just bringing in more customers to the business. So don't be afraid of working within the business. Read the book and then really think through, what do you need to do? What is the most important thing that needs to get done in the next month, and 3 months, and 6 months, and don't let off that.
I love it. Travis, man, thank you so much for sharing. I know that there's, so much value that, is being given to all the listeners, and, just hoping that, what we can do here is continuing to help people shorten that learning curve and, continue to build a business beyond themselves. I want to see people that are solopreneurs get out of that hamster wheel, build a business beyond themselves, have a team that they can pour into, that they can create, more jobs here for people and opportunities, and serve their customers at a high level. So I appreciate you coming on. And where would you want to direct people to if they're like, I want to learn more about Travis or what he does or his company? Where would you want people to go?
Yeah, I would say probably my Instagram would be the easiest place to start, because it can funnel out to everything from there. You get to see me flying airplanes. You get to see my business reels on there and whatever it is. So just at Travis Weathers is my Instagram handle. And so just Instagram Travis Weathers. And, obviously if there's questions or they want to reach out, you can just direct message me and I'll pretty much reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Travis. And for everyone listening in, obviously, of course, if you're getting any value from this podcast, the only way that this thing grows is if you share this with your friends. Give us a 5-star review, help with that algorithm that I don't fully understand how it works, but help me out with that algorithm. Give us a rating, share with your friends, and we'll catch you in the next episode.